The first gifts were placed under Mission Australia's Giving Tree at Charlestown Square today. Members of the public are being asked to donate a present and place it under the tree. Around 200 gifts have already been donated by the Body Shop. The gifts will be distributed on Christmas Day during the Mission's lunch in Civic Park.
We provide lunch on Christmas Day for homeless, disadvantaged, lonely, anyone in the community who would like to come along, who has nowhere else really to be on Christmas Day.
Meantime, Kmart stores have installed wishing trees and are also keen for people to donate presents for those less fortunate. And at the Waratah Village Shopping Centre, finishing touches are being made to this year's Christmas Lighting Spectacular. The display that boasts almost 100,000 tiny globes will be switched on tonight.
Travis Dodd came off the bench on Saturday night to run half the length of the field on his first touch and set up the winning goal. Dodd also set up Joel Griffiths the week before, and the performances are posing a difficult question to United's coaching staff. Do they start the number 7 or his capable counterpart, Joe Shripper?
That's why it's nice sometimes to be the assistant. It's a nice headache to have with both players in form. And look, we just have to take each match as it comes.
Griffiths' goal, meanwhile, was his third in as many games. Billed as a prolific scorer when signed by United, he's certainly living up to his reputation.
Giles worked extremely hard on the training pitch, with his fitness. He does a lot of selfish running for other players as well, and it was really nice for him to pick up the winner.
That winner saw United maintain its unbeaten run and third on the NSL table. This Saturday, though, Newcastle travels north to play another team yet to lose in the Brisbane Strikers, but is determined to keep the ball rolling.
As we know, winning is a habit, losing is a habit as well, and it's definitely one habit which we don't want.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
As a key marginal seat, Paterson was always going to be a tight race, and it was evident just hours into the vote counting the trend reflected the national swing, which returned the coalition to government for a third term.
And I've got to say that I'm very honoured that people have invested their vote with me, and I will work as hard as I can to make sure that I reward them.
At the close of counting today, Bob Baldwin was approximately 1,660 votes ahead and maintains a 54% majority compared to the ALP's 46%. Although he was staring at another defeat in the seat he's held twice, ALP member Bob Horn today still managed to see the positives.
I'm very pleased to say that in Paterson there was a swing to me, and so it indicates we did something right.
Not enough, though, to retain the marginal seat and not enough to take the fight another round.
And I think it's time we say, hey, we move on, we do something else, we get a life, and we start to do a few things that really we must consider for our own future.
Meanwhile, the future for Bob Baldwin includes fulfilling a $20 million funding promise to repair the Buckets Way.
There are a whole range of things that need urgent attention, and I'll be working on all of those.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
This solar-powered car, specially designed to climb hills, is just one of the many projects up for assessment for final year Newcastle University engineering students.
The students for 4 years have been doing a lot of different subjects. This is where they actually put it all together and do an enormous project.
And there are no limits to the imagination. This electronic rifle scope eliminating human error. William Tocker's project, a free space optical link which uses a laser instead of optical fibres to transmit data, is even on the verge of being developed into common usage technology.
The company I work for, Novotix Research, we're at the stage where we're looking for investment capital to try and develop this further, install a small, locally built network, get it up and running and try and service Newcastle.
Meanwhile, the region's elite maths students were recognised for their performance in the Hunter Primary Mathematics Competition in a special ceremony today. This year, a record 16,000 students competed in the annual competition. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Searles to Sam, Smooth Satin, Ocean Spirit, Joe Fess. Oh, it's a great lineup, and the barrier draws panned out that it'll be a very interesting race Saturday night.
Ben Steele spends his working hours fixing patients as a nurse at the John Hunter Hospital. But this week, he's out to fix his opponent, Sydney's Michael Neeland, as he continues his fight for a world kickboxing title. Newcastle-based Steele faces up for the feature event of a 9-fight card, and preparations are well on track.
Preparation's been good. There's been a bit of a hiccup with the change of opponent, which has sort of ordered my training, as in the way I prepare for the fight. But once we got over that, got back into the hard yards of the training, it's been going well.
Coach Robert Murdoch has no doubts about Steele's potential.
We've got big hopes for Ben, and every time we've asked for something more from him, another step up the ladder, he's managed to fulfil that and do it better than what we expected.
But it's a two-way street.
More the merrier. It's hard to say what we're going to get. Hopefully we can pack the joint out like last time.
Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Anne Van Zeest is just one of the many Parkinson's disease sufferers who's been helped by specialist nurse Evelyn Collins.
Being able to discuss with someone who has knowledge of the complaint takes a lot of stress off us.
As well as looking after patients in Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital, Evelyn also provides counselling over the phone. Often she's the first point of call for people diagnosed with a degenerative neurological condition.
It's a bit of a shock hearing that diagnosis first of all, so I can provide them with some reading literature and I guess answer any questions that they haven't been able to think about when they were confronted initially.
The Project Parkinson's team, who helped raise the money to employ Evelyn part-time, is hoping to expand her role to full-time and allow her to travel to other centres outside Newcastle.
That's ultimately our aim, so that people with expertise in Parkinson's, everyone with Parkinson's should have easy access to help and advice.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. A record turnout of 300 delegates from all over the state, and even some from New Zealand, are attending the Coastal Conference, held this year in Newcastle. Topping the agenda was finding out about amendments to the Coastal Protection Act, soon to be brought before the New South Wales Parliament.
The need for having provisions within coastal management planning for emergency planning, so that we can plan for change that will take place during storms, both before, during and after the storm.
Keynote speaker at the conference was Chief Justice of the Land and Environment Court, Marla Perlman, who said the authority often plays the role of umpire.
It's a question of balancing the impacts against the desirability and benefit of the development.
She also defended criticism about the spiralling cost of litigation, often faced by councils, ratepayers and developers.
The fact is that litigation in this state, indeed in the world, is a very expensive process, but it's part of the democratic process.
The 4-day conference winds up tomorrow. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Lovers of coffee and a beachside view have been angrily frothing at the mouth ever since pathway seating at the Swell Cafe was forcibly removed 2 weeks ago. The order was made by council because it's still waiting on a licence application from the cafe operator. The lawyer for Newcastle's first oceanfront espresso bar made his point at a public meeting last night. The Lord Mayor said Swell must follow the same procedures as all other cafes. Council has received complaints that tables block public access and visibility for lifeguards stationed in a room next door. Cafe owner Mark Prince appealed to Council to erect a life-saving tower or build decking off the pathway.
All of those things are possible, but what we need to do is make sure that the tables and chairs that are there are licensed, and I believe that as soon as we get an application from the operator, Mark, we can process that within a few days.
The Lord Mayor says if approved, surfside seating could be back in place by this time next week. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
It's a case of no more teachers, no more books for Tim Watts, and with his HSC over, his fledgling career as a V8 Super Sedan driver is now his main focus, especially after missing the first round of the series at Newcastle Speedway, not through study but something more dire.
Yeah, about 3 weeks before the HSC started, my appendix burst and I had to have it operated on, so that put me out of the first race meeting.
While only 17, Tim has almost as many Super Sedan starts to his name, with his best result a third earlier this year. Now also in his third season, he's well accustomed to controlling a 590 horsepower Falcon and coping with the sport's thrills and spills.
Oh, you never can tell. Anything could happen and you just got to hope for the best.
Along with wanting to race for the rest of his life, Tim also plans to study mechanical engineering at uni, and already does most of the work on the car himself, although Mum and Dad's back paddock has become an unofficial testing ground.
Yeah, there's not much grass left in there now.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Real estate in Newcastle is still good value compared to other areas, so I expect the trend to continue for the next 12 months or so.
He's only been playing the game for 6 years, but James Nitties already has an impressive resume. He was a state age champion at 17, won major tournaments in New Zealand and Victoria at 18, and celebrated his 19th birthday last month by winning the regional qualifying event for the Australian Open. It's the stuff dreams are made of.
Well, Baddeley did it the last 2 years, so when he was only 18, 19, and it'd be good to think like that, but hopefully just to go out there and enjoy it has been my first Australian Open.
He'll be up against the likes of Allenby, Appleby and Els at the Grand Course on the Gold Coast in a week's time. It's the icing on the cake for the talented teenager who's just completed his first year as a senior.
There's a lot more tournaments on a wider scale of travel, and the players are a lot more of a higher quality. As it was tough in juniors, but I mean there's a lot more good players around in seniors, so it's tough.
And if he keeps up this form, he's sure to make an impression. Amputee marathon swimmer Andrew Crace in the white cap was clocking up the Ks on Lake Macquarie today with training partner Norm Fox. After leaving his leg on the support boat, Andrew was swimming the length of the lake, around 25 kilometres, as a warm-up for February's 22k Perth to Rottnest Island swim and a longer-term goal of swimming the English Channel.
On the half hour he's having a drink stop with just a Gatorade, and alternating on the hour with either one pikelet or a banana, which must taste horrible with this water in it.
A motorcycle crash back in 1983. I used to swim a bit before that, but sort of got more into it. So, can't really go running or that sort of stuff.
Coal Point rower John Smith used his GPS to check Andrew's progress today. The relatively flat lake is vastly different from the cold chop of the English Channel, but the prospect of taming the channel is Andrew's next big goal. It was pretty as a picture on the dam today, but with barely a zephyr, the racing was in slow motion. 50 skippers in the Access Dinghy class are at Raymond Terrace this weekend for the state titles. People with all levels of mobility are able to sail the dinghies because of their stable design.
They've got to be very stable. As you've seen some of the people, if they fell in the water here, they'd be in a bit of trouble. So it's very important that we use a boat that's designed not to fall over.
Among those taking part, state and past Australian champion Wayne Teagle, Australian doubles champ Lindsay Dallman and world blind sailing champion Don Scott.
When you're out in the water, it's pretty hard to tell what a person's disability is. All you can see is their ability as a sailor.
It's a massive task, cleaning up Corlett's Bass Close, one of the worst hit areas from the violent storms. For Peter Cashin, it means removing the storm's destruction from his backyard and repairing ceilings which are still leaking water.
We went out on Sunday for a day out and we came home and we didn't have a home. And it's now 48 hours after and it just seems to be getting worse. And with the weather keeping up the way it is, it's going to be a lot worse.
This couple from Sydney surveyed the damage at their investment property for the first time today.
Pain and a little bit sad.
I feel terrible. I don't know. I feel terrible.
And just 5 weeks out from Christmas, many families face a bleak festive season ahead.
For those who have got major structural damage, they're going to have to face a situation of making other plans, because I'm certain that the builders won't be able to respond as quickly as I'd like them to and have that all fixed prior to Christmas.
The majority of homes in Bass Close are virtually brand new. Here, the damage bill is expected to exceed $2.5 million. The state's disaster recovery service is pitching in, feeding hundreds of emergency volunteers and providing temporary accommodation. For the SES, the work has not let up. In the windy weather, removing trees and securing roofs is an ongoing task.
A lot of the work we done yesterday has been undone, so we're back out again today redoing that work.
Meanwhile, a gale and large wave warning has been issued for the region. The Bureau expects the winds to increase at Port Stephens overnight. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
It's rare to spot whales in the ocean, rarer still to have one washed up on a beach, but that's exactly what happened this afternoon. Tourists on a four-wheel drive tour from Newcastle made the discovery of what appears to be a baby whale, but is in fact fully grown.
We know that it's either a pygmy sperm whale or a dwarf sperm whale. They're very hard to differentiate between the two species.
Its appearance on the beach being attributed to the wild conditions at sea.
It's probably the most likely cause, given that most strandings occur in big storm events like this, or if the animal is very sick.
A close watch is being maintained tonight as carers look after the mammal. They're yet to decide whether to try and put it back to sea or allow it to rest up a couple of days first. Rochelle Reardon, NBN News, Late Edition.
Ron Hartree opened his doors to Newcastle artists a decade ago. The purpose of the self-funded studio to provide a breeding ground for those with a passion for creativity.
It was a project to get artists working with public, and then I found there was a need for it. It just kept on growing.
But in recent times, the inner city studio has experienced financial difficulty, probably exacerbated by the low fees on offer and the several scholarships which are awarded to school students every year.
It's a great resource for kids, and it's for adults who like to see their children grow and become more creative.
But it's also a great resource for anyone pursuing their creative path. An auction of artworks donated by local artists will be held at Derby Street's Cafe Grind on Friday night to help raise money to keep the doors open a little longer.
It overwhelmed me to think that people thought so much about it.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News. The tragic aftermath of the head-on collision just south of the Tea Gardens turn-off yesterday afternoon was obvious. One car was completely ripped apart by the impact after its driver lost control in the wet.
It appears for some reason he's crossed to the incorrect side of the road, completely on the incorrect side of the road, and has virtually had a head-on collision with another car coming south.
Amazingly, the 27-year-old driver from Bundina survived the impact and remains in a serious but stable condition. But the female passenger of the sedan, 71-year-old Alma McPhee from Bellora in Queensland, died at the scene. Her 62-year-old husband also suffered serious injuries. Police today appealing for any witnesses to the crash to come forward.
We feel certain that there would have been someone that would have either witnessed the collision or witnessed the driving of both drivers just prior to the collision, and they would be keen to talk with anyone that may have been those witnesses.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Well, I go through lots of schools, and I have yet to find a kid that doesn't want to play circus.
Despite the week's dismal weather, Newcastle United has enjoyed a more or less standard lead-up to the away game against South Melbourne, a team that's only just registered its first win of the season.
I suppose there's two ways of looking at it. You could say, yes, delighted that they've won because now maybe they'll relax a little bit, but then there's the other way of looking at it and say, well, if now won, they're now obviously got a lot of confidence.
Then again, so should United, being within 3 points of NSL leaders Perth, but Ian Crook's more interested in mid-table and the six-club playoffs.
I'll look at 7th place. That's the first place I'll look at the end of every round of games, and I'll go, right, how many points are we above that?
One player will be omitted from the 16-man squad named today, while Scott Bailey and Mark Wilson haven't trained all week due to respective calf and knee complaints.
I'd be surprised if they didn't start. They're types of players that you know that something is wrong if they're pulling up with something.
Meantime, Newcastle United Sports Club will tomorrow night play host to a memorabilia auction in aid of the John Hutter Children's Hospital Cancer Research and Support Fund. Featuring items from the Knights, Shelley Andrews and Justin Norris, organisers are hoping for a big crowd when bidding begins at 7:30.
Thank you very much. I'll give you a kiss. That's fantastic.
Thanks, gang.
Along the coast, and currently outside it's sitting on 20 degrees.
Gosford and the Central Coast, 94.9 Rima FM. Together with inspiring programs like Life in the Word with Joyce Meyer, each weekday morning at 6.
As indicated by the arrow, the York will be the city's latest 12-storey beachfront building. All 52 apartments will boast absolute ocean views, lower level units to start at $390,000. 2 luxury penthouses, more than $2 million.
You are now getting apartments of a standard equivalent to Sydney, and they are still not anywhere near Sydney prices. We're still well under half or a quarter of the prices you pay in Sydney for the same location.
Charles De Bono is the director of the $30 million North Wing project. He's just opened a showroom featuring artists' impressions of the York, in the past labelled as Newcastle's own toaster, referring to a notorious Sydney waterfront development.
You will always get criticism, and I suppose that could be interpreted as a failing by our part to explain exactly what we are doing.
The York will be built in front of the former North Wing of the Royal Newcastle Hospital. Its redevelopment into a 12-unit apartment complex with harbour views is part of the same project. So far, there have been 300 expressions of interest for apartments in both buildings, mostly from wealthy empty nesters or investors. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
Around 70 commercial fishermen attended the meeting, all keen to put a stop to the proposal to close the Hunter River to commercial prawn trawling.
There's very few recreational fishermen here in the Hunter River that target school prawns. Okay, most of the recreational fishermen use prawns for bait, so to say that closing down the prawn fishery would help recreational fishery would be contradictory unless you're talking about sustainability.
Also under consideration closing off Tuggerah lakes to commercial hauling and banning commercial fishing in the Mile lakes, all of which raised the ire of local fishermen.
The government are trying to use us as scapegoats instead of turning around and solving the majority of the main problem, which I see. I could be wrong, but it's environmental.
Also of concern, the flow-on effects.
How do you think the domino effect's going to go with retail and wholesale, with businesses like myself, the Fish Co-op, Nelson Bay, and everybody else that's involved in the fishing industry?
And the consensus of all in attendance leave the local fishing industry as it is. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. It's an environmental success story and Newcastle City Council is jumping on board. Today yet another colony of dung beetles was released, this time in Nesca Park.
From all reports at the moment, yes, the first set were going really quite well and sort of started to really reduce the amount of dog poo in the areas. This is why then we're sort of setting out the second lot.
Newcastle-based dung beetle supplier Pollution Solutions is now receiving orders from all over Australia from from councils keen to rid their parks of doggy doo. The company has even found a new market, selling beetles for use in the family backyard.
People are much more aware. Initially no one had even heard of a dung beetle or what they do, but of course, you know, we're seeing the results now and people are wanting them just to use in their backyards.
Meanwhile, a mosquito management workshop was held at Hexham Bowling Club today, an appropriate place considering its mascot is Aussie, the giant mozzie. Local government authorities joined with environmental groups and academic experts to help form an integrated approach to mosquito management in the Hunter. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Well, the council expressed a very strong view last night that any money that we get be reinvested in improving the community asset.
Given his reputation as Newcastle Soccer's Mr. Fix-It, it's hardly surprising Con Constantine has plans to help Australia's national team. It involves the federal government contributing $10 million and the 6 states $5 million each over 4 years. Money which would be used to mount what he calls a more effective World Cup campaign.
This is solely for promoting the game. This is not to take care of what Soccer Australia did in the past years. This is to make sure that our boys, when they did come out in this country, they got the opportunity to spend more time.
Constantine will lobby the country's sports ministers before taking the package to Soccer Australia. Ian Crook, meanwhile, is more concerned with the state of Newcastle's national team, with Brad Swancott currently on standby for regular goalkeeper Daniel Beltrame.
He's gone over quite badly on his ankle today, and it's blown up quite badly, so we just have to wait and see.
Crook, however, has named an unchanged 16-man squad for Saturday's clash with Marconi, with either Michael Prentice or Mitchell Johnson likely to sit out the match. It'll be the first time United has met the Stallions since Lee Sterry took up the coaching reins.
I would say it adds extra spice for certain people. It certainly doesn't for me.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Plans for the Esplanade units include an 8-storey residential apartment complex, adjoining townhouses, and a 72-space car park, all up housing 29 separate units. And today, the developer of the old Parnell Place bus exchange is breathing a welcome sigh of relief.
We look back and we've been working on this since 1993, so it has been quite a long effort.
The council says the delay was for a good reason.
This particular proposal is in a very important part of Newcastle, and it's critical that the development be of high quality.
But there's a catch. Mr Lindsay is required to provide almost $400,000, funding facelifts for nearby Parnell Place and Tramway Reserve. It's part of a trade-off to the community for exceeding council guidelines.
The height of the building, and felt that there needed to be something done within the public domain to offset the additional height.
But Mr Lindsay is prepared to do whatever it takes.
So it's an extra $350,000 that we're contributing. And yes, look, it is pretty massive. It's probably no other unit development has ever been levied in this way.
Construction is expected to begin in June.
I feel a lot better than I did a couple of days ago, that's for sure. Just don't have any energy or any go. Very really lethargic, you know.
Winger Adam McDougall always seems to come home from England with unwanted baggage, namely injuries. After the World Cup last year, it was thumb and ankle problems that stalled his start to the season. Now it's groin and ankle that threaten to plague his pre-season.
For me, it was a blessing that there was only 3 games. If there were 7, I probably wouldn't have made it all the way through. So it's been a long year, and it's just good to see the sun, and it's good to be home.
Ben Kennedy certainly agrees. The big second rower will follow McDougall for a check-up tomorrow on shoulder and hand problems, but says he's a certain starter against English champions Bradford in the club challenge.
Might only need something minor, you know, a little operation just to straighten up and put a pin in it or something, but, you know, I don't know until we get an x-ray, so.
While the Australian captaincy debate grows, Andrew Johns was just happy to secure the number 7 spot after his Man of the Series performance and get home after today's delayed flight.
Oh, I can't. I've been in this suit for that long. Just can't wait to go for a swim.
Hooker Danny Baderis will be quick to follow suit. Happy with his English tour debut, the hooker will enjoy a well-deserved rest, along with the other night's tourists who aren't expected back to training until January 7.
Family live up Foster and all that sort of thing, so I'll be heading around up there and a couple of trips up anywhere sandy and with a bit of salt water, I'd say.
No sooner was the official ceremony over than the excited crowds began to pour in, ready to start shopping. And it was all hands on deck as close to 1,000 staff prepared to process the first of the sales. At this time of year, many needed little excuse to spend some serious cash.
Christmas presents and everything. It's been great.
Fun. I'm having a ball. It's good. I love spending the husband's money.
Stage 1 of the $75 million development features all the major chain stores as well as 37 specialty shops. And as for parking, there's 1,100 car spaces available.
In the statistics we've seen, there's a number of people that can't get an element of shopping in Maitland, and what they've been doing is going to Newcastle for that shop, and what we're providing today is that level of shopping.
Another 40 shops are also on the way when Stage 2 of the centre is completed at the end of next year. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News. Privatising the state's electricity industry has been a contentious issue for the past 5 years, with fears it could result in job shedding, increase the price of electricity and lead to power shortages. Today, those concerns were discussed by workers at Pacific Power International, with reports the company could be privatised.
What we have here at Pacific Power is some excellent skills, an excellent skill base that is desperately needed by this industry and should remain in public hands.
Well, I don't think the people in control understand what it means to the whole industry. I think it's very, very sad and ill-informed.
And it's not just jobs at stake. Workers say if one company is privatised, the rest of the state could follow, leading to an unreliable power supply, which has been experienced in Victoria. Taking the ownership of electricity companies away from government hands could put an essential utilities service at risk, as demonstrated by the collapse of the Enron company in the United States. Once the world's biggest energy trader, it recently filed the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history. Today, the Treasurer's office said there's been no formal decision to privatise Pacific Power. Meanwhile, workers and union officials will seek a meeting with the Premier and the Treasurer before Christmas. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Just walk up to the bar, identify yourself as the driver for the night. Publicans will happily give you a wristband and then just provide you with free soft drink.
For the past 4 years, owner and skipper of Aurora, Dr. Jim Holly, has brought his boat and crew to Newcastle Harbour to practice for the big race. His crew this year is a mix of experience and youth that includes his wife Mary as navigator, embarking on her 5th Sydney to Hobart.
My job involves sort of taking positions and working out where we are all the time, but it also involves knowing what the weather is and being able to predict changes and what's happening, so we can then work out what tactics we're going to employ and how we best sail the boat.
Rob Howard has 12 Hobarts to his credit and this year will share the deck with his son Will. At age 18, he's a 2-time state cherub champion and is now trying his hand in the big league.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous just because of the really rough races in the past, but I'm also looking forward to it.
2 nights a week, the crew can be seen on Newcastle Harbour, putting the Far 40 through its paces, practising the skills they'll need crossing the notorious Bass Strait.
And we do a lot of briefing of our main, as you would do when you're getting in a storm. We do a lot of sail changes as well, changing your sails down to a smaller sail. We do that for about 3 or 4 hours.
The skipper has 12 Hobarts under his belt and seems equally at home sharing the harbour with ships and tugs as he does riding the ocean swells.
A full house at the Wyong Leagues Club last night and many were in the corner of the hometown boys. 33-year-old Mark Bajero from Wyonga claiming a points victory over two-time Olympian Jason Rerere. Rerere hung in there, managing to lay a few good shots on Bajero. However, an oft-balanced Rerere was soon off his feet, knocked to the ground in the 7th round, Bajero taking the middleweight title. It wasn't just the fighters struggling to stay upright. In the heavyweight bout, Newcastle's Pat Kennedy won a points decision against Christian Taylor, the big men going toe-to-toe, withstanding the hardest of knocks. Former Olympian Danny Green continued his winning run in the super middleweight division, the Sydney boxer too good for New Zealand's Daniel Tai. Daniel Rousel took out the PABA cruiserweight title, wearing down two-time Olympian Sam Luay. While the Central Coast Carly Meehan has taken out the IBF Pan Pacific heavyweight title, winning by knockout in the 8th round. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
A storm before kick-off didn't help United's bid to attract a record crowd for the top-of-the-table clash, but just over 12,000 still made it to Marathon. Not every Novocastrian was in the home team's corner, former Newcastle captain Shane Price returning for the glory. The match had been talked up all week, but on the night it was the state of the pitch that got most comment. The surface not that great, and neither was the first 30 minutes, but 19-year-old Joey Shripper changed all that. Scott Bailey accredited with the goal, but there was no doubting the teenager's driving strike to set it up, or his desire to get his own name on the score sheet. Bailey was lucky just to remember his after copping a nasty knock. It split the rugged defender who required a quick patch-up job. You got the feeling Perth were building up to something, and in the 65th minute, the league's best attacking force finally found a way through. The Glory finished the stronger, but Asala Massey almost stole it in extra time. Undefeated in his 4 pro fights, fans wish they could see Chad Bennett in the ring more often, and the man they call Hollywood put on a show against Mick Kilmurray. From whatever angle, Bennett was all over his opponent. So much so, Kilmurray's own corner made the decision for him. Pat Kennedy is called anaesthetic, but up against the 126 kg Christian Taylor, there were no thoughts of dozing off. It was toe-to-toe stuff, as the big men rarely came up for air. A cut, not the best look for Kennedy, but he was easily the points winner and now on track to fight Solomon Hamono in Newcastle. Former Wallaby captain Nick Farr-Jones helped Maitland Rugby Club kick off their 125-year celebrations for the coming season. The Blacks enjoy one of the oldest and longest rugby traditions in the country. And no play today in the Under-19s National Cricket Championship in Newcastle due to heavy rainfalls overnight and this morning. Weather permitting, one-day games will be played tomorrow. The Kings started the game looking for their first win at home this season. Joel Griffiths just went looking for goals. A missed chance. He soon ran into a Kiwi defender who was right on target. Shaken but not stirred, the young striker soon set up his partner Travis Dodd for the first of the night. New Zealand national team captain Chris Zoricic wasn't making any new friends in his homeland, but Paul Erlovich had the locals cheering soon after. 1-1, it shouldn't have stayed that way for long. Newcastle created plenty, but finishing was the problem. Griffith's shot, though, couldn't have come much closer. As it so often happens, a goal did come, but against the run of play, and Andy Vlahos had no trouble finishing. Newcastle did find the net soon after, but the goal was denied as Griffiths was out of the field of play in the lead-up. If Newcastle was nervous, the Kings were hardly calm. 3 times Erlovich had the chance to seal the match, but 2-1 is how it stayed until the final minute. Flown over as a late replacement for Asala Massey, Daniel McBreen's arrival in the game was right on time. Out for 6 weeks with injury, McBreen's return left the Kings fans feeling sick.
Managing, caring, sustaining is a slogan locals claim is ironic, given the RTA's plans to bulldoze a 9-kilometre route through the forest of Bulladila Mountain. Those who protested today are against the RTA's Eastern Bypass option, which diverts traffic around the base of the mountain. And it's not just the bulldozing of the forest they're concerned about. The mountain is also a sacred site for the Worimi people.
They had the same belief system and the same connections to this particular area. Certainly they wouldn't be just putting it aside.
The RTA has already carried out an Indigenous study of the area. However, the residents want an independent report. They're told the RTA has made its decision.
Why don't they pick something that doesn't affect not only the mountain, but the connection of the mountain with the town and the school?
They're now calling on Minister for Roads and Transport Carl Scully to come and see the site and discuss the cultural significance with the Worimi elders. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. The first Freedom Air flight from Auckland to Newcastle taxied into Williamtown Airport this morning, heralding not only the start of a new Trans-Tasman connection, but a traditional Maori haka as well. Among its 100 passengers was the Mayor of Auckland, Sir Barry Curtis, one of many ready to use Newcastle as the gateway to northern and western New South Wales.
Not only is the Hunter region well known in New Zealand for its wine, but also I think your coastline, your beaches, your cafes, your whole infrastructure, I'm sure will be very attractive to people from New Zealand.
The advent of the flights and the tourists it brings is expected to inject $11 million into the economy.
We calculate over 400 jobs generated by these 7,000 visitors alone. Now that's a very significant addition.
And it's not only a one-way service. As the newly arrived New Zealanders were welcomed, 130 people checked in for a flight across the Tasman.
I think there'll be more New Zealanders coming into the region. That's the traditional flow.
in terms of visitor numbers. But I believe that we may be very pleasantly surprised because of the convenience of this service directly into New Zealand's largest city, that we're going to get a very good support here locally.
And for many North Coast travellers, the Newcastle Gateway is a welcome alternative to Sydney.
Well, I like to come to Williamtown because it's close to home and it saves me a 2.5-hour trip to Sydney. So I think it's a much better idea.
Freedom Air will fly direct from Auckland to Newcastle twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.